Hi, Anna here. Welcome back to my little kitchen where today we're going to be making this delicious quiche Lorraine. But I also have a special little guest. This recipe is the first that I'm going to let you know is in the cookbook. Quiche Lorraine made the cut. It is such a popular recipe. I know you guys just love it. So I thought it absolutely had to make it into the book. I'm going to show you tonight exactly how I make this. It has a lovely buttery crust. The filling is so luxurious. You want to allow about 3 hours before you're going to serve it to allow time for all of the steps to perfectly cook and set. But I think you'll love it, so let's get straight on with how I make it. First step for making this quiche is to make the crust. It is so incredibly quick and simple to make, and it's going to work with any quiche recipe you want to make in the future. It is a lovely light and buttery crust, and it only uses a few ingredients. You will need a food processor for this. It is a few quick steps. It takes less than 5 minutes to put together, probably less than a couple of minutes if I didn't talk so much. So the first step is to add the flour. We're going to use 1 1/4 cups of flour. That is about 185 grams of flour for those of you who prefer to use grams. And then ice cold butter. So what I do is if I'm busy in the kitchen, I will cube the butter and then pop it back in the fridge just so it's ice cold when I'm adding it into the flour. And then once we have the flour and cold butter together, we're going to pulse it just 10 times to bring it together. Then we're going to be adding in apple cider vinegar and ice cold water, my fancy jug I prepared earlier. So 3.5 tablespoons of ice cold water go into here, and then just eyeball what half a tablespoon is. And then half a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. And we just eyeballed the half a tablespoon as well. And then we're going to add half of this into here. And then we're going to pulse it just 5 times. And then we're going to add the remaining water and apple cider vinegar and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then we'll carry on pulsing it until the pastry comes together and forms a ball. Okay, so it's as easy as that. Honestly, it's going to take you longer to get the ingredients out than it is to make this dough. So then you can see here it has formed a lovely dough. It smells amazing with that apple cider vinegar in it. What we do now is place it in some plastic wrap, press it into a somewhat flat round disc and prop it in the fridge for about 30 minutes while the oven preheats, and then we're going to show you how I blind bake my pastry. And here we go. So this has now chilled down for about 30 minutes. I've prepared a pie dish. This is about a 23 to 25 centimeter pie dish. You can see it's reasonably deep. That is a good idea for this one. I have preheated the oven to 225 degrees Celsius with the oven rack set at the middle or just slightly below the middle is ideal for this. So it is always a good idea to dust your surface with some flour when you're doing this, just to stop everything sticking. And also dust the pastry itself. I got this little fandangle thing from Temu, so pretty flash around here. We're also going to dust and flour the rolling pin. Anything that we can do to avoid the dough sticking is a good idea in my book. And then we're just going to roll this out so that it can fit in the base of the pie dish. So when you're working with dough like this, pretty much you just need to kind of eyeball the size that you're going to need, hoping that you can have enough for the base and then of course to go up the sides as well. So then just keep rolling it nice and thin until you feel like you've got the right shape. So we just check that quickly again. That is looking way better. If there is any gaps, you can absolutely patch that up later. So to transfer dough to a dish, the trick to do, and many of you probably already know this, but I just lightly drape it over my rolling pin and then bring the dish in here and then just unroll it into your dish lightly like that. And then we're just going to loosely let that fall into the dish. And then what I do from here is I just grab a sharp little knife. I'm just going to trim the edges just to the top of the dish. And then once you have that all trimmed to the top of the dish, you can leave it like this. Absolutely, if you wish, you can do some little fancy little pushing together with your fingers just to create a nice little fluted edge, which I'm going to do or attempt to do now. And then I'll come back and show you how it looks for the next step. And what we have here is just some aluminium foil. I have doubled it over and now I'm going to scrunch it up. And what scrunching it up does is simply makes it easier to manipulate. And then we just pop it into our pastry and press it into the edges. So there you go, that is all pressed in there now. What I have here is some rice. Now this is not rice that I'm ever planning on cooking with. This is what I use when I am blind baking. You can buy baking beads, which are little cooking beads that you can get at kitchen shops that you can add in here. They're basically weights that are going to hold down the foil, and that is all this rice does as well. So it just happens to be the right amount. I'm going to pop this in the preheated oven now for 12 minutes, and then I'll show you the next step. Here we are for this first step. So we have delicious crispy bacon here. I've just cooked that. When you're doing streaky bacon, always make sure that you render down that fat. It makes it so much more delicious, which means that we are left with quite a bit of the bacon fat still in this pan. We want a little bit for the next step, but not too much. So always discard your bacon fat or any fat into a separate container, not down the sink. So we've just now got a little bit in there that we're going to be able to use to saute the leeks and onions. So here we are, leeks and onions in here. We're going to saute them very gently until they are translucent, and then go to the next stage. So while the leeks and onions are over there sizzling away doing their thing, I just wanted to quickly show you, this is obviously the pastry we par baked earlier. Once it cools down enough for you to be able to handle it, just grab the edges of this and set this aside until this cools down, and then we're going to pop it back into the jar for the next time I use it. But you can see here that that has kind of partially started cooking our base, so this is where we're going to add all the goodness to next. So here you go, I'll try and show you that a little bit. It is lovely and soft and translucent, smells amazing. So I'll set this aside to cool slightly while we make the egg filling. So now we're going to get on to making the egg filling. So I'm going to have a little natter with you while I do that. I've already got one egg in here. I'm going to add a total of 3 whole eggs. I've had a few negative Nellies on my Facebook page telling me that I talk too much, and honestly, yes I do. These are long form videos where I'm going to chat with you and share with you all sorts of interesting things about the recipes that I'm making. And the more I chat, the more I get to dig out eggshell that I've dropped in there. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the difference between a quiche and a frittata while I'm making this. I'm just going to separate the final 2 eggs. They just have the egg yolk in here. So the difference between a quiche and a frittata is, this is going to go badly, so I'll do it with my hands, is that a quiche obviously has a crust, a frittata doesn't. And the other difference between them, there's a few obviously, but the main one is actually comes down to that a quiche has a lovely custardy, almost creamy filling, and a frittata is more egg strong, so it has more eggs to milk and cream, so that has a different texture, I guess. It doesn't require a crust at all. So that is the main differences between a quiche and a frittata. I'm going to set this aside and use that for later. That wasn't the most glamorous way to separate eggs, but I could tell that those shells were not going to hold together for my usual way. So in here we have the 3 eggs and the 2 egg yolks. To that I'm going to add my salt, so half a teaspoon of salt, a quarter of a teaspoon of ground pepper, and half a teaspoon of dried thyme. If you're using fresh thyme, just use a teaspoon, dice it up finely. I'm going to whisk these together. So to this we're going to add a whole cup of cream and 3/4 of a cup of milk, and then whisk those together. So as you can see, the ratio of cream and milk to eggs is quite high for this compared to a frittata, but it makes it so creamy and delicious. And an exclusive for those of you who've made it this far through this video, I have this in my cookbook and a roast vegetable frittata. It is delicious, so I cannot wait for you guys to see that. That is one of the new recipes. So now we're going to put this together. I will use my hands because this is for my family and it's just at home, but obviously if you're preparing this for the Queen, feel free to use your tongs. My hands are clean. So I'm going to put half of the bacon, half of the leek and onion mixture, and half of the cheese into the base. And this is 1.5 cups of cheese, so that works out to be around about 150 grams. The reason we're doing it like this is simply so that the eggy mixture doesn't lift all of the ingredients up. We're going to make sure we've got it dispersed evenly throughout the dish. And then we're going to carefully pour over the egg and cream mixture. It always comes right to the top and freaks me out, but it doesn't actually rise too much, so you'll be okay. Then we're going to add the rest of the bacon, leek and cheese. And finally, we will put on the cheese and sprinkle that all over the top. We're now going to pop this in the oven to bake. Earlier, when I took the par-baked pastry out of the oven, I turned it down from 225 degrees to 165 degrees. So that's going to ensure a slower cook time for this next stage. And we cook the quiche until it is a lovely golden brown, even colour with nice rise on it. but we still want it to have a little bit of jiggle on the inside. So I'll show you the next step once I've popped this in the oven. I'm going to pop this in the oven now for about 40 to 50 minutes. So I've just got this out of the oven because I wanted to show you it's starting to become golden brown. The edges are starting to lift and cook through, but there's still a little divot in the middle. I think I'll cook this a little bit longer. What we're after is for your quiche still to have a little bit of jiggle, which this definitely does, but I just want the outside sort of raising to be just a little bit closer to the center, but it is starting to look really good, but I can still feel it is quite soft in the middle. So just maybe 4 or 5 more minutes and then I think it'll be perfect. Here we go. I'm pretty happy with this now. You can see it is a beautiful uniform golden brown color on top. It has ever such a slight jiggle to it still, which is exactly what we want. And now the tricky bit. We need to let it sit and rest. It takes around about 45 minutes to occur. It is so tricky to do, I know, but it is absolutely worth it because that beautiful, eggy, creamy consistency will come together perfectly. So set this aside for 45 minutes. I will come back and show you how good it looks when we cut into it. Okay, so it's been about 45 minutes. So this has, as you can see, settled right down and set beautifully. It is still warm to the touch, so absolutely perfect for serving now. I'm just going to cut it into it and show you how good it looks on the inside. Okay, the moment of truth. Let's try not to tip this upside down as I show you. How good does that look? So it has got that lovely custardy texture of a quiche, rich and luxurious. It smells absolutely amazing, filled with so many tasty things. As always, when you're looking for my recipes online, Google Just a Mum Quiche Lorraine in this case, and you can follow all of the information there. I hope you've enjoyed following along. I'm going to serve this up now. It's lovely with a little bit of chutney, a little green salad on the side. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. So thank you so much for following along. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Catch you later.